Hey guys, and welcome to another episode of John Scott's 15, and this is the episodes now where you're going to be able to hear from me, I would say, a lot more regular than I have been, and doing it in these 15-minute spells is certainly going to be a lot more practical for me to give you, I would say, between probably now and the end of the WrestleMania season. So doing these short episodes will certainly make me a lot more regular to be around you guys. It's just going to be sort of when and where I can fit this in, but at least this gives us an opportunity to keep contact with all our audience on the podcast. Don't forget, you can always hit us up on all our YouTube channel, on Wrestleline channel. We're also on Instagram. We've got IGTV set up there as well. So if you guys are into the video content stuff, you can always go along there. If you want to find out all our links and where we are on social media, simply go on to wrestleline.co.uk. And don't forget, if you want to get in touch with the show, as many of you did following the Royal Rumble, it's email at wrestleline.co.uk. And if you haven't already, and you might be hearing me for the first time on the podcast, we're available on all podcast platforms, iTunes, Spreaker, iHeartRadio, Podcast Addict, Cloud, Google Podcast. I mean, just about everything we're on now. So hit the subscribe button and you'll never miss an episode. So let's get down to it then. The Royal Rumble this past Sunday, amazingly, I got most of them right, I believe. I think a lot of you been sending some nice emails for a change to me to say how well and spot on I got some of the predictions. So yes, let's go straight to the top then. Drew McIntyre wins the male Royal Rumble match, and it was I've got to say, what did I think about this? A few people, for some reason, were a little bit negative towards it because of the whole Brock Lesnar thing. For like the first half of the Rumble was just pretty much dominated by Brock. But if I'm being totally honest with you, all the Royal Rumbles we've seen, I was quite happy that they went a completely different route and changed it up and just had Brock Lesnar, who, let's face it, he is on another universe compared to everybody else. If there's a tier system, this guy is, he's got his own stage at the moment. I mean, there's nobody even close to him, even though, of course, he has been putting people over like Seth Rollins, but look where Seth Rollins is right now. So here we go again. It was that time to see if we could make another start, and I thought they've done this really, really well. Brock Lesnar, for the first 15 that were out, including himself, just basically eliminating everybody that came in, including Braun Strowman and Keith Lee, and just a whole host of guys that were coming out. The only thing I did not like about that, I didn't have a problem with him eliminating most of the guys that came down in the way he did, but the only one that really stood out, and I thought that was a complete ridiculous way of doing it, and they should have probably swapped him with someone like Dolph Ziggler and had him come in at the end. That was John Morrison. And the only reason I'm saying this is because John Morrison, he's just come back, and the first thing he does is get completely annihilated. I felt it was a terrible way to introduce him back to WWE. I'm not saying he should be eliminating Brock Lesnar or even holding his own, whereas the other guys can't. But why even have him in that spot? It would have made much more sense to have him in after that. But nonetheless, that's what we got. I thought Keith Lee had a really good spot with Brock, and he got a few shots in against him. Really stood out as a potential big star, like I think we all know he will be in the long run. That's my opinion on that. And so, towards, of course, the end, the return of Edge, a big speaking point of the night, Edge coming back. We had heard rumours that Edge had been cleared since November and had been possibly negotiating with AEW to probably bump his price up with the WWE. The details on that is, as far as I'm aware at the moment, he's signed a 3-year contract and it's very much full-time. So Edge, it's not like just Edge is back for WrestleMania time. This is Edge back for 3 years. So this is a big story in terms of how WWE will probably use him. They need at the moment guys who can be active enough that are more established. And I think if Edge is used properly, he can definitely fit into that role. It was a great moment to see him come back. I like the way they used him, and it felt like a big deal. So it's good to have him there. I'm sure had AEW and Tony Khan managed to get a deal together in place, that would have been a pretty significant signing for AEW. But nonetheless, they weren't able to pull that off. So Edge came back. And towards the end, it was guys were in there like Edge, Randy Orton, of course, the old team of Rated RKO had their moment together. They were sort of teaming together for a while. We had you had Roman Reigns, who I think when he came out, people were expecting or fearing the worst to happen. Obviously, Drew McIntyre, who eliminated Brock Lesnar, what a moment that was. I would have preferred if it had been Kofi that had low-blowed Brock and got him out on the way in. But nonetheless, when Drew eliminated Brock Lesnar, I thought it was the biggest pop of the night for me. One thing I did pick up on about Brock Lesnar, which I don't know if any of you guys did when you was watching, but I thought it was really entertaining, is that every time a guy kept coming down, it was almost like Brock Lesnar had never seen these wrestlers before in his life. It's almost like he doesn't bother to watch anybody else other than his own matches. It was almost like he was jigging to some of the music as they were coming down, and especially when Robert Roode come down, it was Bobby Roode. It was almost like he couldn't believe who this guy was. So I thought that was quite interesting. In those sort of shortcomings for Brock there. Obviously, a great run out for him. And people moaning about Brock Lesnar and all the rest of it. Look, the fact is, no one comes close to this guy. I know everyone gets the ump because, he's not a guy who sticks around and he goes home straight after his matches, but that's what makes him unique. That's what makes him an attraction. And this guy, regardless of what you think about him, he draws the ratings up every time he's on Raw. So you've got to go with it. And this is why WWE used this guy the way they do. So I felt Brock done a spectacular selling job for Drew afterwards. I was a little bit worried that Brock was just going to go back in there and eliminate Drew himself, but thankfully that never happened. And of course, towards the end, there was there was those big moments where it could have been either Roman or Drew. I think people were probably suspecting. Seth Rollins was out there towards the end as well doing his stuff. But in the end, Drew McIntyre winning the match. Of course, on Raw, we now know he's challenged Brock Lesnar, and there was an altercation between those two. I think that's an ideal setup for me. Don't forget, we've got to go through Saudi Arabia again, and I expect Brock Lesnar to be well and truly on that card because, of course, it's the payday. So he'll definitely be there. Of course, the other big news was Charlotte Flair winning the Women's Royal Rumble, something I also predicted. I did not go with the bookies on Shayna Baszler. By the way, the bookies were both wrong on both Royal Rumbles there. They really were behind Roman winning and Shayna Baszler. I'm not sure where they got Shayna Baszler from because, as far as I'm aware, WWE do not see her in that role as of yet. That's not to say she's not going to get a call up soon. However, Charlotte Flair winning, another tick to her list of things and accomplishments and achievements in the women's division. She goes to WrestleMania. She has not announced her opponent yet. They're probably going to stall that for a little while, which is not a bad idea because it keeps it going for a little bit longer. The other big news on the night, of course, the Fiend. He won. They didn't use the red light. Even better for me. Good match against Daniel Bryan. They had the King Corbin match with Roman on at the beginning. It was hit and miss for me. Not too bad, but not overly brilliant. The Bayley match I thought was the fans were so out of it. I couldn't believe it. How much it was so quiet during that match. And Becky Lynch match, which against Asuka, it was good, but I don't know. Sometimes I wish that Asuka would be made more of a big deal of than she is. But yeah, pretty much like last year. Becky this time getting the victory, overcoming her defeat of last year. But then, of course, she did go on and win the Women's Royal Rumble of last year. But those were the matches in between. So overall, the Royal Rumble, I actually thought it was a decent show. considering. I know people were a little bit cold about it because they might not have agreed with the way it went down. But I think in the end, look, the way the way you get a star over, realistically, is to give them the rub. And I felt Brock gave Drew the rub, and I think it made, in the end, perfect sense to have Brock Lesnar involved in the Royal Rumble as opposed to a, WWE title match just added on the Royal Rumble itself. So, I was very all for it, to be honest. We're now, some of the news that was coming out of the Royal Rumble, of course, there was sources in WWE leaking reports that there had been a bit of confrontation between Matt Riddle and Brock Lesnar backstage. Of course, Matt Riddle has made no worries about making videos about both Goldberg and Brock, but especially he's always keeps harping on that he wants to, of course, retire Brock Lesnar. He wants to be the guy that finally does that. So apparently they, and this is just reports, so it's, take it as it is, but sources say that inside that Brock Lesnar and Matt Riddle passed each other backstage. I think Brock basically just sort of said to Matt Riddle the reality of the situation and where he's at. And I suppose in his own way, just putting him in his place. A similar thing happened with Goldberg last year, if you remember, when Goldberg, I think it might have been at the SmackDown show. I can't remember which one it was, or SummerSlam. I can't remember. But, Goldberg had a run-in with Matt Riddle as well. And that video is actually, that's available to watch nonetheless. So, in any case, it was, those were the reports coming out of it. The other big sort of stories as well, that we should probably speak about here is Sting. Yes, Sting is going to be back. Unbelievably, this is at Saudi Arabia show. He's going to be there. I have that on good grounds. That's a definite. Sting will be involved in a match. Now, who he goes up against, I am not too sure, but I would not be surprised if he goes up against the Fiend, Bray Wyatt, in what will surely be just a kind of spectacle rather than anything else. I think focus more on the entrance. Again, this is the Saudi Prince. I'm sure throwing his weight around, getting WWE to bring over who he wants. Of course, the Saudi Prince himself is a massive 90s fan. When they couldn't find, when he found that Yokozuna wasn't alive anymore, WWE shipped in a guy from Japan that they've never used that just looked like Yokozuna. So this is where we're at. If there's anybody out there that was in the Attitude Era, now is a good time to make yourself available, because you never know. You may get the biggest paycheck of your life and head to Saudi Arabia, because this guy is all about that. So that's what's coming out. That's probably going to be the big sort of drawing point of the Saudi Arabia show this year, which, by the way, happens in February. So it's different because normally they go there straight after WrestleMania. So this is going to have a part to play on the road to WrestleMania itself. So it's going to be interesting how they kind of deliver that show and pay-per-view in between. And what else for you? Yes, other than that, look, I felt it was a decent show coming out. I know people harping on it wasn't the traditional look of the Royal Rumble, but come on, guys, we've got 2 Royal Rumbles now. I wasn't too taken back by the whole thing, that it was done the way it was done. So that's just my opinion. Okay, so other bits of news. Don't forget, guys, if you are readily available in Essex on the 15th of February, please do come down. Triumph Wrestling in Grays. I'm going to be there. We're going to have our first feature match. We've got What Culture's Simon Miller in action, who Wrestleline will be promoting for the first time. Our first match on a card, open challenge. We can't wait for that, by the way. So if you can get tickets, just go to Triumph Wrestling, get your tickets there, and it'll be great to see you guys. Okay, we are coming to the end of the 15 minutes, guys. Thanks for listening. Don't forget, if you haven't subscribed, subscribe now, and you will never miss a show. I've been John Scott. You've been listening to John Scott's 15.